Today on CityCast Madison. It's the Friday News Roundup, and this week I'm joined by CityCast Madison's Haley Sperling and Captime State Government reporter Erin McRoarty. A Dane County judge ruled that major parts of Act 10, the 2011 law that restricts public sector unions' collective bargaining power, are unconstitutional. Wisconsin's Democratic chair is looking to lead the National Democratic Committee. Several major Madison bookstores are going through changes, and inflated Santas have once again taken over Monroe Street. It's Friday, December 6th. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. First up, we're talking to Captime State Government and Disinformation reporter Erin McRoarty on the latest with the Act 10 law in Wisconsin. Hi, Erin. Thanks for joining us for this Friday News Roundup.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So earlier this week, Dane County Circuit Court Judge Jacob Frost struck down more than 60 sections of Wisconsin's infamous Act 10, calling them unconstitutional.
Yeah, that was a big shock. I mean, we saw it coming to a certain extent because he had issued a ruling in July signaling that he was going to do this. But with these court opinions, no matter what level they're at, it's always a bit of a surprise. And I think that the fact that it was on a Monday is preferable than, 5 p.m. on a Friday, but it still kind of came as a bit of a shock.
Okay, I was absolutely going to ask that because it was like we all just had this Thanksgiving holiday and then we come back. It's like, oh, a major news, like huge news, in from the right, in from the left. I'm not talking politically, but yeah, so it came as a shock to you. That makes me feel a little better. But, let's talk about it because this is massive. Before we dive into that news about what he struck down, would you be able to give us just like a quick explainer on what exactly Act 10 is and why it caused so much controversy back in 2011?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you mentioned, 2011, this is a 13-year-old law. The fact that it's still being litigated over and over again just shows how controversial it is. So former Governor Scott Walker, a Republican, rolled this out about 3 months into being in office. And it sparked massive outrage from unions, public employee unions. And we saw thousands and thousands of people down at the Capitol, people sleeping over in sleeping bags in the Capitol Rotunda, at least 13,000 people, outside marching with signs. And this was days and days.
And nights.
Days and nights. And then, it was passed by the Republicans in the legislature. Democrats tried really hard to keep it from passing. They actually Senate Democrats left the state to try and delay the vote. And it ended up going through.
In the dark of the night.
Yeah.
It was very controversial.
Any effort to try and delay that vote, which ultimately, was unsuccessful, and it passed and ended up sparking an unsuccessful recall election, which, Walker survived in 2012. But the reason why it was so controversial is because it basically gutted collective bargaining for public employee unions. So this is teachers, this is municipal employees. It completely took away their ability to negotiate things like benefits, like retirement benefits, healthcare, working conditions. They were still allowed to negotiate over wages, but it was capped by inflation. And so it really just hobbled collective bargaining, and it sparks, a huge upset among, unions. And of course, we have to remember that Wisconsin is where public employee unions started. It was controversial for a number of reasons, but, in 1932 is when public employee unions, began here in Madison. So this is the birthplace of these unions that had their rights completely upended. So it was a big deal, and people were really, really upset, and of course still are.
Right. What exactly did Judge Frost call out as being unconstitutional about Act 10?
Yeah, so essentially, he brought to the forefront of his argument that it kind of treats certain public employees differently. So there's a carve out for police and firefighters, designated public safety employees, and then the rest of public employees are considered general employees. But the issue is that some employees that are ostensibly, considered public safety employees, like officers that work in state prisons or Capitol security officers or municipal officers, environmental wardens, they are treated as general employees. And so they have their bargaining severely limited under Act 10, and other public safety employees like police and firefighters don't. Some say that the thinking behind that was to keep police and firefighters from striking for their rights and, leaving certain public safety aspects of public safety limited. But yeah, essentially Frost called that out and said that lacked rational basis was what he said in his July opinion. So he's trying to get rid of basically all of the functional framework of this law. He struck down, as you mentioned, more than 60 sections, and what's left is kind of an empty framework. It's not really enforceable.
Yeah.
Of course, that lasted for less than 24 hours before it was appealed. And they appealed it, the Republicans in the legislature appealed it to the Waukesha Circuit Court of Appeals. And the fact that they chose that court is strategic because it is a conservative leaning court. Just earlier this year, that court ruled that it limited the state Department of Natural Resources' ability to regulate PFAS at cleanup sites. So we've seen a series of rulings that signal that particular court is, pretty friendly to conservative causes.
Right. As they would say, Judge Frost in Dane County it would be more amenable to
exactly
dismantling Act 10.
Yeah, you can look at different courts across the state, and based on their rulings and also based on their location in the state, you can kind of assess their partisan leanings.
Yeah, advocates of Act 10, so folks that obviously don't want it to go away, have argued that the measure has saved Wisconsin taxpayers billions of dollars since it was signed into law. Is that true?
That was one of the main arguments that Walker used, when he was campaigning for office, was wanting to limit this and save the state money. Advocates for throwing out the law say that, saving a buck isn't worth limiting the bargaining power of employees that are important to the core functions of the state, teachers that teach our kids, municipal officers, members of city government, things like that. So there's definitely a lot of dispute over the benefits and costs of this law.
Yeah, it's one of those issues that show just how deeply purple Wisconsin is. Deeply red, deeply blue. We're the state where, public sector unions started. And we're also the state where Governor Walker came into power with that pitch of, hey, we're going to dismantle the unions. And it worked. And it's been that way for, as you said, over a decade. And now we're seeing a change. It's unlikely that this will fizzle out. So it's a political fight. You shared that, obviously, this issue has already been appealed to Waukesha Circuit Court. Are there any other, parts of this story that you'll be paying attention to as time moves on here?
Well, I mean, you just mentioned time, and that's a huge factor because we have a Supreme Court election in April. And I think it's very safe to assume that this is going to make its way up to the state Supreme Court. It was appealed to the Waukesha court. I think that it's safe to say that the plaintiffs, union reps who filed this lawsuit in 2023 are going to ask the state Supreme Court to take direct action on it. It is in the best interest of the people trying to keep Act 10 to kind of drag their feet as much as possible, with the hope that after the April election, the state Supreme Court will have a conservative majority. Right now, that liberal majority that we just gained with
Janet Protasiewicz,
Justice Protasiewicz, we saw that. And then, of course, we could see, a conservative majority again. So Justice Ann Walsh Bradley announced her plans to retire at the end of this term. And that was another kind of blockbuster piece of news that was dropped. And we see Dane County Judge Susan Crawford throwing her name in, and former Republican Attorney General Schimmel also throwing his name in. And so we see yet again that partisan divide, and the majority of the court, it stands on the line. So if this makes it to the Supreme Court after that election, it really depends on the election results to see how it's going to pan out.
Well, Erin, we will have to have you back as this story moves along, and we know that is going to be one huge race. We are not done. Everyone's already gearing up for the next Wisconsin Supreme Court election. So, Erin, thank you so much for coming on for our Friday News Roundup and giving us this update on this massive news.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
That's Erin McGroarty, Captime state government and disinformation reporter. If you want to check out more of Erin's reporting on Act 10, head to our show notes for a link. And hey, we're going to dive into more news roundup, but first, let's take a quick break. We're back with our Friday News Roundup, and I'm bringing in the leader of this here podcast to the conversation now, Haley Sperling. Hey, Haley.
Hi, Bianca.
So the Act 10 news, it came in like right after Thanksgiving. It was like, hello, big consequential movement. Welcome back, public sector collective bargaining for now. That was wild.
The leftovers aren't even cold, and the court said, here's some more spicy news for you.
Yes. And that was just a great summation that Erin shared with us, which is really exciting. Glad we had her. Politics, it's still pretty hot right now. Actually, the chairman of the Wisconsin Democratic Party, Ben Wickler, is in the national spotlight, looking like a darling to the National Democratic Party. He's entered the race for the new chairman of the Democratic National Committee, who is basically the executive of the party. So if you don't know, it's an election within the party where the 448 DNC members vote for their new leader. That process actually hasn't happened since 2017 for the Democrats. So last time Donald Trump was elected president, that was the last time there was an open race for the DNC chair. It's kind of even more of an important thing when that party is not in charge, because the president is kind of like the de facto chairman. So Donald Trump will be kind of, the de facto leader of the Republican Party, and the Democrats need someone to look to. So just like what the DNC chair does, I saw in a good PBS article, Donna Brazil, a former DNC chair, said, quote, "There's no absolute job description, but they do everything." So they're part cheerleader, they're part fundraiser, part organizer and recruiter, and also like part public messenger. So they're the brains, the bronze, they're everything. And they get very active in the like non-presidential years for like other races in the party. And Ben Wickler, it's just cool to see his name being put out there and being, Wisconsin continues to be that chick. It continues to be on the map for national politics. We obviously have been feeling that way through the entire presidential election. That said, so in terms of the race, he's not the current frontrunner, though he has actually received major endorsements from like left-wing think tanks. And, I saw Senator Baldwin, giving him support. So it's a race. The other people who are in that race are Ken Martin, who's the front runner, the head of the Minnesota Democrats. You know that they've been doing well. So he's got a majority of the members at this point rooting for him. And then also in the race is former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley and New York State Senator James Skoufis. So it's just kind of interesting to see. Ben himself is quite a name, especially if you're in the political scene. You're no stranger to Ben Wickler. But now the country has really got their eyes on him. He's released kind of a video on his website announcing that he would love the job and that, quote, "the soul of the Democratic Party is the fight for working people," which is what we were just talking about with collective bargaining rights. So, and there's an opinion piece from Michelle Goldberg in the New York Times this week with the title, quote, "If anyone can save the Democrats, it's Ben Wickler." So, I mean, in terms of his track record, just to give folks a sense, Wickler was really critical in electing Judge Janet Protasewicz to the court last year. That's one of those things that, you can't just focus on the presidency, but you have to focus on the other consequential seats in your state for the whole party. And that was obviously monumental in a race that was really one of the most expensive state Supreme Court races in American history. He's also being credited for really pushing off a larger pro-Trump swing in Wisconsin, in this battleground state. Trump did win, but Kamala Harris lost Wisconsin by the least amount. Like, her margin was closer in Wisconsin to winning than in any other swing state. So, and a lot of people are giving Wickler benefit for that.
I think that it's very interesting that, like, specifically the line that you called out from his video is him talking about the Democrats being the party of the working class, right? Like, they're fighting for working people, because that's a huge part of where Democrats lost in this 2024 election. And so now it seems like having someone like Wickler run for this seat is that appeal to that working class sort of people. And I think that we've said it before, but Wisconsin really is that pick me girl, right? When it comes to politics. And like, we have a lot to say. And I understand that Minnesota loves their Democrats, but like, if you want to be speaking to the people and if you want to make a bigger impact, it makes sense to go with someone like Wickler for this role, right? To bring more eyes on Wisconsin, to bring more money to Wisconsin, to bring more campaigns to Wisconsin. And I mean, as you mentioned, as Aaron mentioned earlier, we've got a massive, massive, massive Supreme Court race coming up next year. So this is only going to get more intense and more heated, because that could change the makeup of the court. That Wickler, again, fought very hard to swing in the direction of the left. So, yeah.
And he's celebrated for his fundraising chops. Like, for sure, he is a very prolific fundraiser for the Democratic Party. And that was one of the things Senator Baldwin said about him. Like, he was also crucial for her reelection to the United States Senate. So there are these sort of wins that you're seeing. And he's being credited for just how much money he's been able to bring into the party.
And I mean, a huge part of this role and the role of any like lead executive is just finding money, right? That's what CEOs do. They have to raise money. That's what the DNC chair does. They have to raise money. So I get it. And if he's a good fundraiser, he's a good fundraiser.
But where some of us would rather be spending money? At the bookstore.
Shop local. Bookstores deserve your money. Yes, on the lighter side of news, on the non-political side of news, I guess I should say, there's a lot of news coming from Madison's bookstores, and there is a little bit of a catch. I do have some good news, and I've got some bad news, and personally, I'm a fan of getting the bad news out of the way right away, so that's where I'm going to start, if that's okay with you, B.
I'm here for it.
So last week, State Street mainstay Paul's Bookstore announced that after 70 years, the business will soon close. So cue sad noises. It's very, very sad. But 70 years, that's a great run. Paul's made the announcement on their social media saying, quote, "After 70 years of buying and selling books, Paul's Bookstore is winding down the business and will close in early 2025. It's been an adventure and a labor of love, and now it's time to say goodbye. Stop in, find a good book, say hello and goodbye, and keep on reading." I think it's very sweet. It's very sad, of course, when anything like this happens. But Bianca, did you ever go to Paul's?
I did, and honestly, I know my first reaction when I saw the news. I was like, the bookstore by UW Credit Union on State Street at the, it is so the storefront is so charming. It's iconic. It breaks my heart. It's iconic. I have like multiple pictures of just their storefront because I'm like, they do incredible displays, and like honoring different groups. And
they've got like that beautiful window display, and then the inside, it's very eclectic, like there are books everywhere. It's very cozy. You can tell, again, these bookstores are very community oriented. So it's very sad to be losing this place. Again, they'll be closing down shop in early 2025. So stop in while you still can, support the business. And I'm just curious as to what we think is going to take its place. I don't know. Any bets on what'll go in there? I just hope it's not like an expanded Chipotle or something like that. That would make me sad.
I mean, honestly, it's just like have to have a conversation about this, but can State Street retain any friggin' charm? It's just been sorrow after sorrow. I mean, there's a few spotlights of, independent, locally owned spots holding it down. But, if Med Cafe goes, I'm moving.
Oh my God.
I'm leaving Madison.
Oh my God.
I'm saying it right now. I won't stand for this. We need some of those, it's starting to look so corporate on State Street. And I mean, they have a Chipotle right there, but what else is going to go in there? I don't know. I can't even say.
I hope that there's space for another local business to move in for someone else getting their start. But yeah, that's definitely a conversation that we want to have, is who can survive on State Street. But moving into some of the good news, over on Monroe Street, owner of the Mystery to Me bookstore, Joanne Berg, announced that she is selling the shop to 2 of her employees. So they are going to take over the store likely early next year. And, it's exciting to see local businesses being passed down to new generations of leaders. In a conversation with the Cap Times, Berg said selling the store was, quote, bittersweet, but being able to sell it to 2 of her employees was, quote, a dream come true. So it's a nice kind of full circle moment. Joanne is a lovely, lovely lady. We've had her on the show before talking about Monroe Street Festival, and the love that she had for all of her fellow business owners and for the communities was just so apparent. And she's such a mainstay in that area. So if she trusts these 2 new people to come in and do a good job, I'm sure they're going to be great. And the 2 new owners, they're also both pretty recent moms. They both have 1-year-old children. So they plan on hosting some more like parent focused events. So that'll kind of like change up the pace of that area. And also, according to the Cap Times, the new owners hope to start hosting more events in the store, just kind of in general. Currently, they typically host readings and book signings, but they want to start bringing in like book clubs and more community focused events. So again, it seems to me that these days bookstores are just so community oriented and are really leaning into their neighborhoods and into their specialties. And it's really heartening to see. And I feel like especially in a neighborhood like Monroe Street, it's ripe for that community connection,
Mm-hmm. There's the heart there.
There's so much heart.
Like, this is my bookstore. It's dang near close to the love of a library, like the love of reading and sharing it with one another and like having readings of someone's new book. And, there's a lot to love.
And it is. And like, it's so much more fun than like shopping on Amazon, which I don't even need to get into. That's a whole like 3-hour podcast. We don't need to talk about that.
You won, Jeff Bezos. You won.
But not here, not in Madison, not in this town.
Mean, Paul's.
Yeah, well, they're not saying they're going out of business because of Amazon or anything like that. To be clear, okay. I would just say like, it's nice because the folks at Mystery to Me are just like, we can spend 15 minutes with you and we will recommend you the perfect book, and they're like, it's all about building those human connections rather than Amazon. That's just like, you clicked on this, you might also like this. And it's just an algorithm, right?
Yeah,
and
Alexa
we're defined
picked
by this.
It out for you.
Right? My bestie Alexa. So it's good. It's good news that's happening there. It's exciting. It's some fresh blood. It's good stuff going on. And speaking of community, the last bit of bookish news I have takes us over to the east side, my side of town, where a Room of One's Own bookstore just announced that they are opening an event space. So the new space is called, aptly, the Reading Room, and it's located just west of the store itself at 2713 Atwood Ave. And the shop had been renting the space and holding events there since the summer, but didn't formally announce the addition until November, according to Cap Times reporting. And again, shout out to the Cap Times, shout out to the lovely Natalie Yar, who is the reporter behind both this Room of One's Own story and the piece on Mystery to Me. Thank you for all your work, Natalie. So back to the Reading Room. The shop hopes to make the Reading Room a very cozy and intimate space for their events, one where people don't have to like awkwardly maneuver around people there for an event or, you know, like sneak behind the speaker in order to look at their next potential purchase, which is definitely something that has like happened to me. I don't know if you've ever like stumbled in on something.
Oh yeah. Recently at Leopold's, like I was at a book club and then it's like, oh, there's also the Wisconsin Book Festival and there is a huge talk happening upstairs. Yep. And, you know, yeah, for sure.
I love it. Yeah. It's so this new space will get rid of that problem, which is great for people like me who have like crazy social anxiety where I'm like, I am a burden if I am within like 3 feet of anyone. So they're like making that move for you, which is really nice. So I think the moral of all of these stories is that people are really hungry for community and for actual gathering spaces. They want to talk to each other. They want to see each other. They want to exchange ideas. And again, just like Mystery to Me, it's really heartening to see local businesses reacting to that and actually creating those spaces, you know, with Room of One's Own, making that space. It's super awesome to see. Also, shout out to Room because they just launched a new line of merch.
A new line of merch?
Yeah, they got like dad hats and there's a beanie that I really like that's you know, I've been in my camo era recently. It's a camo beanie and then in blaze orange it says Room and it's really cute. They also have some like
nice. That is made for you.
Right. I know, it's very Haley coded.
Speaking of adorning things, how about adorning our streets?
Yes. Have you been to Monroe Street lately, Bianca?
I'm going next week. I don't know.
Well,
I'm the far land of Monroe Street. I'm going next week.
Get prepared because I'm going to paint a picture of what you're about to see. And it is just Santas everywhere. And I mean, truly everywhere. We have talked about this in the newsletter. We talked about it last year, but this is a new tradition that's happening in the Monroe Street neighborhood. This is, depending on how you want to spin it, this is either the second year of the tradition or the third year of the tradition, because the first year there were pretty much five inflatable Santas that were put up in front of Monroe Street houses. But this year, that number has grown exponentially. And it pretty much just started off with these neighbors who were watching Hallmark movies together. This story in itself is a freaking Hallmark movie.
It kind of is. Like, are we actually, is it a set for a movie and they're not telling us?
Right. Are they like, where are the cameras? But it's Shondaland somewhere. But it started off with these neighbors who were watching Hallmark movies and they wanted to bring more holiday cheer to the neighborhood. So they're like, let's put up these Santas. And so, like I said, in the first year, they had 5 houses with these big 12-foot inflatable Santas. So, you know, just picture a big old jolly man kind of blowing in the wind. And last year, it picked up and there were like almost 24 Santas around. And this is when people started to pay attention, people like us in the media, because I remember writing about it for the newsletter and people are like,
as far as I'm
heck?
concerned, you broke that story open.
We cracked this case wide open.
I didn't think that.
But it's I walked over there, I took a bunch of photos of Santa, I talked to some of the neighbors and they were really getting into it. And so yeah, there were like people on Reddit were like keeping count. They were like, there's 15 Santas up today. So it got people involved. People were coming out to see it. It was a weird situation. I don't know. I think they're kind of like imposing. Like I said, they're like 12 foot tall.
They're twice the height of a human.
They're massive. They're massive.
Yeah.
And this year, I was driving down Monroe Street just earlier this week, and there are dozens. Like, it has already taken off. It has exploded. People got the memo, and Santa is here. And I will say, like, it's spread even further kind of off of Monroe Street proper, where like even if you kind of get into the neighborhood, people have Santas up. And even some of the businesses have blow up Santas in their windows. I saw one over at Garth's and like in Mystery to Me. And so, yeah, some of the neighbors, like they went out to these businesses and they convinced them to participate. And their goal is to have 100 Santas go up. And honestly, I didn't count, so I'm not sure how close they are, but it felt like millions of Santas are out there already.
The spirit.
The spirit
it's spreading.
There's at least one dragon, a blow-up dragon, and at least one black Santa. So we're getting a little bit of some diversity here.
Let's get all the colors of the Santas of the rainbow.
Exactly.
And also, I love the threatening dragon amongst them. It's like, and fire.
Right. But he's a festive dragon. He, she, they.
Oh, really?
It's a festive dradragon. It's cute. It
He's
looks like it's
festive?
sleeping. Yeah, I think he's got like a little scarf on. It's very like non-threatening.
Oh, okay. I'm mischaracterizing. Okay, well, I'm really looking forward to that. It's like only just the beginning of December, and people are like, we're here. We're here.
They are ready. They were ready. And if you want, there's still time to buy a Santa. There's still time to get in on this. I think they run for about like $50, and you can get them at any like hardware stop, something like that. You know,
maybe let it spread to the rest of the city.
Right. Oh my God. I've seen them. It's funny, like in the Trader Joe's, there's that apartment building above, and I've seen them on some of the balconies of the apartment building. So like he is risen. Literally.
Oh. It's not that holiday, Haley.
I'm Jewish.
Sorry,
I don't know the difference.
You're fair. That's fair. Well, here's to Santa's spirit and Monroe Street, like coming through it and being jolly. I'm jolly to be here with you, Haley. Thanks as always for rounding up the news this week.
This has been a delight. Let's do it again.
That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, your host. We're produced by Adam Sage, Will Fulton, and Andy McDaniel. Haley Sperling is our executive producer. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen. This week, Alana Nevins was our newsletter editor in for Rob Thomas. You can always get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to Madison Minutes. And hey, if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with somebody who goes hard for holiday yard decorations? See you back here Monday morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, stay warm.